Dear viewers, welcome to Assyria TV. The Swedish member of the European Parliament, Mr. Lars Adaktusson, is organizing a conference on the future of the Nineveh Plain next week in Brussels. As we have witnessed the past few days, the Assyrian Democratic Movement and the Chaldean Catholic Church both withdrew from the conference, and we received news that the Abna al-Nahrain party has also decided to boycott the conference. In order to shed light on this issue, we have invited Mr. Afram Yaqub, board member of the Assyrian Confederation of Europe, to our studio. Welcome, Afram.
Thank you.
So, Afram, as a board member of the Assyrian Confederation of Europe and as a long-time policy expert on issues in Iraqi Assyria, having worked in Brussels with these issues, can you tell us what problems you see with this conference?
I see two main issues with this conference. The first one is exclusion, and the second one is policy issues. And concerning the exclusion, it's actually two-folded. It has to do with exclusion of voices from Iraq. So certain voices who are known to be more independent in regards to the so-called Kurdish regional government, they have been excluded from participation, and the others who are well known for their support and stand with the KRG have been included. And then you have the exclusion outside of groups outside of Iraq. You have well-known groups who are critical of the KRG, who have been excluded from this conference, and at the same time you see that groups who are very well known for their support and their loyalty to the KRG and Kurdish groups have been included since day one in this process of this conference. And I have to say also, concerning the policy issues, that will be presented and presumably adopted at this conference, they take us actually back a few years in time to a situation that was bad, that we shouldn't look back to go back to.
Before ISIS?
Before ISIS, yes. I mean, now, after ISIS, we should look forward to go to a better situation, not go back to before ISIS. But as in terms of policy, I see great problems with this conference as well.
We spoke earlier with the president of the Assyrian Confederation of Europe, Atiya Gamri. It was in Assyrian language, West Assyrian language, but I think you have watched it. So I want from you your comment on the statement of her.
Yeah, I completely second her opinion on this, and we are really astounded by our exclusion as a confederation representing 4 national federations and tens of affiliates and tens of thousands of members across Europe. At the same time as we see that, you know, fringe activist groups who really represent a handful of people, and groups like the Dauronoye, under the name of the European Syriac Union, who represent really few people among our community, for us who know the community, they have been included in this process from day one. And when we have talked about to Mr. Lars Adaktusson about this, why are you working in this way? Well, the response we get is that, you know, it just happened to be so. So he's trying to defend himself that this was not intentional in any way. But I mean, come on, are you really expecting us to believe in this on this political level? Such things don't just happen to be. They are clearly planned, cleverly planned in detail. So we believe that the exclusion is intentional. It's well designed so that only so that a minimum of voices who are critical of the KRG will be present at the conference. So I think Adaktusson is misleading people about this, actually. When I saw some Facebook comments, and I think in his statement also he says that so most of the people, 60 people, are from your people who are attending the conference. Yes, that's true, perhaps, but these 60 people, 90% of them are pro-KRG. How do you explain that to us? Why don't you speak about that? What I want to say is that Mr. Lars Adaktusson is trying to play the role of the neutral mediator on the issue of the Nineveh Plain. And then he really needs to be neutral. But we see that at the same time he's basically in bed with groups like the European Syriac Union, the Davronoye, who we all know are pro-Kurdish, and other activist groups who are don't really have a role in the community and don't really have a democratic structure, a membership structure, as other organizations who have been excluded from this. So it's difficult for me to see how he expect us to buy into this conference and respect the results of this conference and expect people or groups not to boycott the conference. Yeah.
So you mentioned the KRG. I would like to show you a piece of investigative journalism done by the Assyrian National Broadcasting, MBSAT, on the issues of KRG influence. Let's take a look.
The Kurdistan Regional Government's representative to Washington, D.C., Bayan Sami Rahman, met with the Syrian Catholic Archbishop of Mosul, Yohanna Petrus Moshe, on June 9, 2017. Rahman reports that discussions took place on security in Christian areas. Rahman also indicates that Archbishop Moshe thanked President Masoud Barzani for his support of minorities. The KRG has been exerting pressure on all types of leaders to force Peshmerga into the Al-Hamdaniya, Baghdad, also known as Qaraqush areas, in order to occupy all of the Nineveh Plain and to annex it into the KRG. Bringing in religious leaders to discuss issues of territorial, physical security represents a strategy by the KRG to target and pressure the most vulnerable organizations to further the effort to steal more land from Assyrians. Archbishop Yohanna Petrus Moshe followed up his meeting with the KRG in D.C. by meeting with the Chaldean Community Foundation and the Chaldean American Chamber of Commerce in Detroit. This is creating concern among Assyrian nationalists who want to see the creation of a Nineveh Plain province tied directly to the central government that gives Assyrians the greatest amount of self-determination. Martin Menna, head of the Chaldean Community Foundation, is a strong ally of the Kurdistan Regional Government and publicly declares that the Nineveh Plain is part of a greater Kurdistan. Martin Menna has been quoted, stating that the central government of Baghdad has repeatedly tried to harm us, says Menna. There has been a pattern of invasions by different groups to our villages. We want the Peshmerga to protect our villages if something goes down. President Masoud Barzani said that the Kurds will defend the lands of the Christians. This is a great opportunity to liberate and help repatriate these areas. By saying repatriate, Menna is publicly indicating that he believes the Nineveh Plain is historically Kurdish. Menna's praise of the KRG and Peshmerga reflects either complete ignorance of or willful support for the Peshmerga's betrayal of Assyrians in the Nineveh Plain. The Peshmerga disarmed all Christian Assyrians in the Nineveh Plain weeks before ISIS attacked, and then made a calculated withdrawal in order to fully expose Assyrians, Yazidis, and others in the Nineveh Plain to the full wrath of ISIS. This has allowed the KRG to make territorial gains in the Nineveh Plain, a policy which Menna supports. His meeting with Archbishop Moshe raises concern about the pressure on religious leaders in Iraq to accept KRG plans to steal more land. Assyrians will remember that the Chaldean American Chamber of Commerce and the Assyrian Universal Alliance are partner organizations on the Nineveh Council of America. Together, they supported the House Concurrent Resolution 75, which stated that the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, the Lebanese Republic, the Republic of Turkey, and the Kurdistan Regional Government in Iraq are to be commended for and supported in their efforts to shelter and protect those fleeing the violence of ISIL and other combatants until they can safely return to their homes in Iraq and Syria. This resolution led to the recognition of genocide against Christian Assyrians, but praised the Kurdistan Regional Government despite their betrayal. The Chaldean American Chamber of Commerce and Assyrian Universal Alliance, as members of the Nineveh Council of America, assisted in hiding the betrayal of Peshmerga by praising the KRG through this resolution. Once again, this raises serious concern about the pressure being put on religious leaders externally and internally to allow the KRG to annex the Nineveh plain.
What are your comments regarding the information in the clip we just watched?
I think it's a good example of how the KRG tries to hijack or manipulate our agenda as Assyrians, and they do it with the help of agents. It could be a priest, it could be a bishop, a patriarch, community representative. We recognize this from before. They've done this since many years. And I think this conference in Brussels is a very, very good example of this, these mechanisms at play, you could say. And I mean, my message to Mr. Adaktusson is really, we actually don't need your help to serve the Nineveh plain to the KRG. We could do it ourselves. We don't need any help from the European Parliament or any other political actor. The Assyrian people could come together and just say, Mr. Barzani, we want to live under your rule. So if you're trying to help us, then listen to us. Listen to what we have to say. Don't force things on us. I mean, we need your help in order to resist pressure from the KRG and others. We need to get maximum results for our community, for our nation in Iraq. We don't want to settle for second best. I mean, the Assyrian nation has always experienced this kind of pressures, and we've always resisted. And what makes me hopeful today is that when I look around, I see actually more people realizing what's at play, what's happening, and the disinformation, the false slogans, you know, the slogans we all know that, oh, come on, stop creating divisions, let's now unite for once in this conference, etc. Well, excuse me, unite for what exactly? For what kind of policy do you want me to unite? For a policy that will serve the Nineveh plain to KRG for nothing? No, I want to unite under such policy. So away with these false slogans. I mean, people are really seeing through this more and more. And this makes me hopeful for the future. I think we will be able to resist these kinds of pressures very well.
Mr. Adaktusson issued a statement in English and in Swedish on Thursday, refuting referring to some extent the claims made about him and the conference. You read it. What are your comments about this statement?
I think it's a big personal loss, political loss for him as a politician, that he felt that he had to come out and say, hey, look at me, I'm an honest guy, I'm not trying anything special, I don't have a special agenda, my agenda is honest. So I think it's a loss of prestige. But at the same time, when you look at his statement and you look at the facts on the ground, what's happening now, you see that he's actually continuing to be dishonest with us. I mean, I can take two examples. In his statement, he says like 9 political parties will be represented in the conference except one. Except one. Well, Mr. Lars Adaktusson...
Well, he didn't mention it.
He didn't mention which party. This is the interesting stuff, and this is what shows that he's continuing not to be honest with us. Well, this one political party that he refers to happens to be the Assyrian Democratic Movement, which is the biggest Assyrian political party, and at the same time is the biggest Christian political party in Iraq. So this party, in terms of popular support, this party has probably the popular support these other 9 parties have nearly, if come close to what the Assyrian Democratic Movement has. So he's clearly, playing with words, being dishonest, not telling it as it is, that the biggest party that has most popular support among the people has boycotted this conference. Another thing that shows he's dishonest is he says that in a sentence, all churches have been invited, and among them who will attend is Patriarch Afram Ignatius II, the head of the Assyrian Orthodox Church, and a bishop from the Syriac Catholic Church from Iraq. Well, first of all, these 2 personalities are well known among our community to be pro-KRG. That's something we have to know. The second is, he's not admitting in the press statement that the Catholic Assyrian Church of the East, which is the biggest church in Iraq, issued a statement saying we will not attend this conference. And
what's your evidence about that?
Yeah, at the time he issued his statement on his blog. The statement of this church was already up running on their homepage, official homepage. He knew about that. They notified him.
I'm talking about the Assyrian Orthodox Church and the Assyrian Catholic Church.
Yeah,
which are
pro-KRG.
Yeah,
that's an interesting question. I mean, no one needs to believe what I say here. There are many reports I could refer to, but I will mention one which is really good at this, and it's the report written by Human Rights Watch. As we all know, Human Rights Watch is one of the biggest human rights organizations in the world. They are very well respected. And in their report issued 2009, the title is On Vulnerable Ground, and it's specifically on the minorities of the Nineveh Plain. So 2 investigative personnel from the Human Rights Watch spent weeks in the Nineveh Plain, in other areas, interviewing people on the ground and getting their testimonies. And when you read that report, it shows you the mechanisms the KRG is using in order to subdue the people, and they are using very much the churches for this. It's a patronage system, so they go to this priest in Baghdad or another town, and they give him guards, they give him privileges, they give him money to rebuild or build his church. They make him as a sultan almost. I was there in the Nineveh Plain. I saw this with my own eyes. The level of what can you call it? I mean, every priest had become almost like a prince with his own little kingdom, thanks to the KRG agenda. So don't believe me. Read these reports. You will see the system at play here, which the KRG is using. And in regards to the Patriarch Afram Ignatius, you just see his statements and his actions. Consistently pro-Kurdish, pro-KRG, and in Syria pro-YPG and PYD.
Let's go back to this statement.
Yes, I mean, so he doesn't mention that the biggest church in Iraq is boycotting his conference, although at the time of issuing his statement he knows this. So once again it shows he's dishonest. I mean, another question in relation to church figures in political matters. I mean, I want to ask Mr. Lars Adaktusson, can he show me an instance, a moment when the Swedish Archbishop went to Brussels to represent Sweden and Swedish interests at a conference? I have never seen this at a political decision-making process. An archbishop or a bishop or a patriarch going to meddle in these affairs. So if he doesn't accept this, if he comes from a political system that doesn't have this, that church leaders meddle in their political affairs, why does he invite or open the door for our church leaders to meddle in our political affairs? I mean, just an honest answer on this would be enough, actually.
So, what you are claiming is that Lars Adaktusson is twisting the truth in order to make things look better than reality.
In my view, there's no doubt about it. I mean, for being a politician from a Christian democratic party, supposedly representing Christian values and democratic values, this is, I think, very bad of him. I mean, the actions we've seen, specifically with this conference, the exchanges we've had with him and the exchanges others have had with him, I mean, it's very far from Christian values, it's far from democratic procedures. How can you claim to be democratic when you exclude the biggest political body in Europe representing Assyrians from Iraq, the Assyrian Confederation of Europe, while you, from day one, work hand in hand with fringe groups who represent a handful of individuals and who are openly pro-KRG, have an open agenda?
Let's talk about the policy issues. I have a little interest into the policy issues. So, in terms of policy, what are actually the Assyrian democratic movement's objections of this conference?
Yeah, and this is the core, really the core of the issue with this conference, the core problems with this conference. And this is, if you notice the statements of Lars Adaktusson and his assistant writing on Facebook, commenting, they don't want to comment the policy issues, because the policy issues show the pro-Kurdish agenda. They expose the pro-Kurdish agenda. So the letter with which the Assyrian Democratic Movement issued, where they declared that they will not participate in this conference, is 4 pages long, and it deals with many issues, but I will focus only on 3 of them here. And the first one is security. So this policy document, which will be presented and is anticipated to be adopted at the conference, which is basically a roadmap for the development of the Nineveh Plain, in terms of security arrangement, it is a regression. It reverts us back to a situation before ISIS, where the security of the Nineveh Plain was chaotic between the Peshmerga, the Iraqi army, local Christian guards attached to Barzani through Mr. Sargis Aghajan. We all have heard of this plan and know about this mechanism. I mean, as a nation, why should we go back to that security arrangement? Can anyone try to convince us why that would be good for us? The security arrangement that will be good for us is that we, the local inhabitants of the Nineveh Plain, will have the resources to have a local force that will protect them, their area. That's a good security arrangement.
Go back to 2000.
That is good policy. The policy that will be presented at this conference is bad policy. It takes us back to many years back, and it leaves us. I mean, that policy, that security arrangement, can only be in the interest of one group, the KRG, the so-called Kurdish regional government. It cannot be in the interest of anyone else. The second issue is the time frame. Mm-hmm. Now, the situation in the Nineveh Plain, as we all know, is chaotic at the moment. The infrastructure is destroyed, most of it. The houses are burnt out. People are scattered, etc. So we are at our weakest moment as a nation and as inhabitants of the Nineveh Plain. And any roadmap not detailing a time frame for when decision making can begin is working against us. Because if you would have a referendum in the Nineveh Plain today, asking people where do you want the Nineveh Plain to belong to be aligned with, the KRG or the central government, it's impossible that it would reflect the true will of the local population, because as things are now, as I said, everything is upside down. You cannot take decisions when everything is chaotic. You have to wait until the population has returned, until things have normalized to some extent to prior ISIS levels, and that's when you can have a referendum and accept the results as an expression of the true will of the local inhabitants. So that's also not having a time frame for this is only in the interest of the KRG, once again. The third issue is the sustaining of the status of disputed areas. Now, this policy document at this conference does not mention with one word the decision by the Iraqi government in January 2014 to create Nineveh Plain province. It doesn't mention this. It's like it has never happened. And this plays also into the hands of the KRG because it upholds, it sustains the status of the Nineveh Plain as a disputed area. And this can also only be in the interest of the KRG. No one else is interested of having the local inhabitants of the Nineveh Plain. It's not in their interest to have their area as a disputed area. It's only in the interest of the KRG. So there are really serious policy flaws. It's too long to dive into every issue, but these three items show you that the design of this is unfortunately pro-KRG and it cannot be accepted, and any outcome from this conference will not be accepted. It will be illegitimate.
What was Lars Adaktusson's response on the policy issues which raised by the Assyrian Democratic Organization?
As we can see from his statement he issued the other day, and as we can see from his assistant's comments on Facebook and some emails, there's no policy discussion. He doesn't want to discuss the policy issues. And that's interesting. I mean, I think he has no answers because these issues really reveal his agenda, which he claims he doesn't have. I mean, instead of being honest, instead of saying, okay, perhaps I have to rethink this whole design, what he's doing is that he's trying to corner the Assyrian Democratic Movement by saying that, well, if you don't show up, you will lose big time, and this is the last chance for you, and this is the only moment that you can speak with the international community, etc., etc. Of course, no one is going to buy these threats. The Assyrian people, the Assyrian political groups have been speaking to the international community for many years, long time before Lars Adaktusson got engaged with these issues. Just a few weeks ago, I recall that a delegation from the Nineveh Plain Protection Units visited Washington, held several meetings with, among them with the White House, State Department and others, very high-level meetings about the future of the Nineveh Plain and the Nineveh Plain Protection Units. So that kind of pressure, Lars Adaktusson, doesn't work, really. We should put that aside and start looking with honesty to dealing with us with honesty and true partnership instead of just telling us, I know what's best for you.
Okay. How would you like to conclude your view on all of this?
Yeah. My words might seem harsh, but I must say that, I mean, it takes a lot of political stupidity to work hand in hand with the most outspoken pro-Kurdish groups and at the same time claim that, well, I don't have any agenda. I cannot describe it in other words than political stupidity. And it takes even more political stupidity to openly show your preferences and at the same time claim that, well, you know, I'm just a neutral mediator, I'm just trying to help the Christians of Iraq to survive. I mean, for me and others living here in Sweden, we know that Lars has a background in Swedish television. People outside Sweden might not know this, but we have to keep in mind that Lars is an inexperienced politician. For most of his life, he was a reporter at Swedish television, and the biggest reason for him being a politician, elected politician at the European Parliament today, is not because of political excellence. It's because he is a familiar face in Sweden, and many Swedish people voted for him because they knew him. You can draw parallels to Donald Trump. He's a public figure, TV figure. Of course, you're going to get votes. I think his inexperience in politics has really revealed itself in this conference. I hope that he learns a lesson from this. I'm a member of the Assyrian Federation of Sweden also, and we had some dealings with him before, tried to warn him about this approach of his one-sided approach. And I hope now that he can learn a lesson from this, that this doesn't go down well. It won't be accepted. We won't accept a Kurdish agenda being imposed on us, not from Lars Adaktusson, not from the KRG, not from anyone. We will resist. We will do everything we can so that we maximize the benefits for our people on the ground. I think we're going to see much more happening in regards to this conference, in the coming days.
Thanks a lot for you, Mr. Afram Yaqub, for the light that you shed on this conference. Thanks a lot. Dear viewers, we reached to Mr. Lars Adaktusson's office, and we asked him for interview. We got a written response, written letter from his secretary referring us to the written statement of Mr. Adaktusson. So that's something we must notice, and we say it. Thank you, our viewers. Thank you for staying with us till the end of this interview, and we hope for you all the best to another program. Other days we say goodbye.